Marianne Svensson didn't believe in ghosts. At least, not the kind that haunted castles or whispered your name through walls. She was a rational woman, a travel blogger with a camera, a drone, and over 200,000 subscribers. She believed in editing software, click-through rates, and dramatic lighting. But that changed the second night she stayed alone at the Streifjell cabin, 20 kilometers outside Tromsø, Norway, nestled deep in the snowy mountains where phone signals vanished, and the wind sang through the trees like something half asleep and dreaming. She had come for peace. What she found instead was a watcher in the snow. The cabin belonged to her late uncle, Einar, who died the year before, slipping on ice during an avalanche rescue. No body had been found, only his snowmobile, stuck in a drift like a steel tombstone. When the will was read, she was shocked to discover he'd left her the property. She barely knew him. A quiet, strange man who preferred reindeer to people and often spoke of old things that didn't like being disturbed. The cabin was small, rustic, and filled with his smell. Coffee, leather, and something else. Something cold. Like steel and snow. There was an old wood stove, a shelf of dusty books, half in Sami, half in Norwegian, and a small generator that buzzed like a dying wasp. Marianne arrived on a Tuesday, planning to spend 7 nights there to film a winter isolation vlog, 7 days off the grid, Arctic edition. It would be dramatic, moody, good for the channel. She spent the first day recording slow pans of the snow-covered trees, the distant mountains, and her red cheeks as she narrated what it felt like to be truly alone. At night, she cooked freeze-dried food, read her Kindle, and slept under thick quilts with the sound of wind scratching the windows. The second night, she woke up at 2:13 a.m. There was no reason, just a chill, a nudge from inside her ribcage like a sixth sense gently shaking her awake. She checked her phone, no signal, but the time blinked red. She rolled over. And there it was. At the edge of the forest, near the line where the trees began their thick, whispering guard, stood a figure. Tall. Still. Cloaked in a heavy parka or coat. Just standing there. Staring at the cabin. Marianne blinked, rubbed her eyes. It didn't move. She watched it for nearly 10 minutes, her breath fogging the inside of the frosty glass. Then it was gone. The next morning, she chalked it up to her imagination. Maybe a hunter. A hiker. A stump in the right shape. The mind could play tricks, especially out here. But the next night, it happened again. Exactly at 2:14 a.m. She hadn't set an alarm. She didn't need to. Her eyes snapped open at the exact minute, like some inner clock had been wound without her knowledge. And there it stood. Same spot. Same pose. Motionless. She didn't film it. Some part of her didn't want to. Not yet. It felt wrong, somehow. As if recording it might give it permission to come closer. On the fourth night, she finally brought out her camera and zoomed in. It had a face now. Pale. Eyeless. Like snow packed tight around sockets that never blinked. She dropped the camera. By the 5th day, Marianne had stopped filming. Her subscribers would just have to wait. She told herself she was sick. Maybe it was the cold, maybe altitude sickness. Maybe it was cabin fever. But deep down, she knew it was fear. The kind that doesn't shout, but whispers, low and constant. The figure came back each night, precisely at 2:14. Never a second before. Never a second after. It never moved. Not a tilt of the head. Not a twitch of the hand. But its presence filled the cabin like smoke. During the day, Marianne walked around outside, trying to find tracks. There were none. Not even a single boot print in the snow. Impossible, she said aloud, just to hear her own voice. She tried setting up a trail cam. But every morning, it would be knocked over, the memory card missing or corrupted. By the 6th night, she slept with a knife from the kitchen drawer under her pillow. A ridiculous, dull thing meant for slicing bread. But it gave her some illusion of control. She kept the generator off now. Sat in darkness. Waited. When the clock hit 2:14, she turned toward the window. The watcher was there. But something was different. It was closer. Maybe 2 feet. Maybe 10. It was hard to say in the moonlight. And now she was sure, it wasn't a man. Not fully. Its shoulders were too long, its arms too stiff, like twigs frozen under snow. The head tilted slightly, as if listening. She closed her eyes. She didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, she found the floorboards in the corner of the cabin slightly lifted. Warped, like something had pushed up from underneath. She pried one open. Underneath was a box wrapped in oilskin. Einar's handwriting on the lid in crooked letters. Do not use. Do not listen. Do not look back. She opened it. Inside was a small, jagged bell made of black iron. Cold to the touch. No clapper. Just an empty hollow sound when she shook it. And a note. Handwritten. Torn from a journal. They come when you whistle. But they stay if you stare. One guards the cabin. The others come from the back. Never go outside after 2:14. And whatever you do, never turn around if you hear your name. The words chilled her more than the air ever could. On the 7th night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the armchair facing the window, wrapped in a blanket, holding the bell. Her phone was dead now. The generator didn't respond. She didn't light the stove. Just darkness. And silence. Then came the cold click of the clock striking 2:14. The figure appeared. But not at the tree line. Now it was just outside the window. No face. Only snow where a face should be. And it didn't stare at her anymore. It stared over her shoulder. Behind her. She remembered the note. Never turn around. And then, she heard her name. Marianne. Soft. A whisper. From just behind her right ear. Turn around, please. I'm so cold. Her breath caught. She gripped the bell. Her knuckles went white. It spoke again. It's me. Einar. You opened the box, didn't you? Her uncle's voice. She wanted to turn. Every cell in her body screamed to turn. But she stayed still. Silent. Outside the window, the watcher raised its arm slowly, and pointed behind her. Its hand didn't tremble. Its finger didn't waver. But its mouth opened wide. And it screamed, though no sound came through the glass. The whisper behind her changed. It got louder. Angrier. More guttural. She felt fingers brush her hair. And then, she rang the bell. The moment Marianne rang the bell, everything changed. Not with a bang. But with a silence so deep it made her ears ache. The whisper behind her stopped. The wind outside the cabin stilled. Even the pine trees, always swaying in the dark, seemed frozen, like they were holding their breath. Then came a low groan. Like something waking up from centuries of sleep beneath the earth. The bell in her hand shook, though she hadn't moved it. Outside the window, the watcher remained still, but now its mouth closed. It lowered its arm. Slowly. As if nodding. Acknowledging. Approving. And then, turning its head not toward her, but toward the back wall of the cabin. It was protecting her. It had always been protecting her. Not a stalker. Not a ghost. A sentinel. A warden. She dropped the bell. It bounced once on the wooden floor with a hollow clink. Behind her, something scraped against the walls. Long fingers. Or claws. Bone against log. She didn't move. Couldn't. But the thing behind her didn't whisper anymore. It growled. Low. Deep. A sound she felt in her spine, not her ears. The window creaked. And the watcher stepped forward, 1 foot. Then, another. It moved for the first time. And the thing behind her screamed. A shriek so full of rage and hunger, it shattered a glass on the table beside her. The watcher raised both arms now, wide like a crucifix, and the snow around it exploded in a circle. A ring of white fire. Marianne still didn't move. She remembered the final words of the note. Never turn around. So she didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes tight. When she woke up, it was morning. Gray light spilled across the floor. The bell was gone. The window was open, snow drifting in. The chair she had sat in all night was tipped over. And there, outside the cabin, just at the edge of the woods, stood the watcher. Back in its place. Unmoving. Facing the trees. Facing away from her now. It never returned to the window. Not again. 3 days later, when the storm cleared and the rescue helicopter finally arrived, they found her shivering but alive. She didn't speak for hours. When they asked if she had been attacked, she said no. When they asked if she had seen anyone, she shook her head. But later, in the hospital bed in Tromsø, she asked the nurse for paper. She wrote it all down. Every word. She mailed it to herself. A sealed envelope. Inside was the story. The warning. And a photograph, taken automatically from her dropped trail cam before it was destroyed. A grainy black and white shot. Of a figure at the tree line. But it wasn't a man. It was taller. Its body was sharp and wrong, too angular, like frozen wood twisted into a human shape. Its face was a blank plane of ice. Its hands were branches. Its spine curved backward like an elk. But its eyes were watching something. Not the cabin, but the thing crawling up behind it. Black. Boneless. Smiling. The cabin is still there. Empty. Untouched. No one has been since. But hikers who pass nearby sometimes report strange things. Voices at night. A pale man at the tree line. And deep in the snow, footprints that lead to the back of the cabin. But never away. And always at 2:14 a.m., if you're awake and brave, or foolish enough to look, you'll see it. The watcher. Still standing. Still guarding. And whatever's behind the cabin. Still waiting. Natalie Caldwell had never heard a hotel phone ring in the middle of the night. She didn't even know people still used them. She blinked in the darkness, the lamp still on beside her. She had passed out the moment she laid down in room 712. Exhaustion had pulled her into a deep, dreamless sleep after her flight to Geneva. But now, that shrill metallic ring sliced through her brain like a cold knife. She reached for the receiver. Hello. There was a pause. Then came the voice. Soft. Female. Shaky. Help, please. I'm in room 616. Then, click. Dead silence. Natalie sat up slowly. Her breath caught. She looked around her hotel room as if someone else might be in it. She picked up her cell phone. 2:17 a.m. No missed calls. She tried to go back to sleep, but her heart thumped too loudly. Something about the way the woman had whispered the word, help, didn't sound like a prank. Finally, she called the front desk. Bonsoir, Hotel Lumière, a man answered. Natalie hesitated. Someone just called my room. She said she was in room 616 and needed help. There was a longer pause than she expected. I'm sorry, madam, he said carefully. There is no room 616 in our hotel. Natalie frowned. But, she said. There is no room 616, he said again, firmer now. We go from 615 to 617. It is a superstition, madam. Some buildings skip certain numbers. Natalie thanked him and hung up. She laid back in bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. But she didn't sleep again. By morning, Natalie told herself it had been a dream. She had flown across 3 time zones, skipped dinner, and downed half a sleeping pill before bed. It wasn't surprising her brain had made something up, probably borrowed from a movie she'd seen years ago. Still, the front desk clerk's reaction haunted her. He hadn't laughed. He had sounded tense. Like someone trying too hard to sound casual. Over her overpriced breakfast croissant and coffee, she searched the hotel map printed on the back of the room key folder. Floor 6. Rooms 601, 602, 603. All the way to 615. Then, 617. Number 616. That wasn't that weird. She'd heard about hotels skipping the 13th floor. Even some airlines skipped row 13. But 616? Why that number? That afternoon, Natalie wandered the hotel hallways under the excuse of stretching her legs. The place was oddly quiet, even for winter in Geneva. Most guests must have been out. She took the elevator to the 6th floor. Ding. The hallway looked like the others. Polished floor, warm lighting, identical doors in both directions. Room 615 was at the far end on the right. Room 617 stood next to it. In between them, a smooth, cream-colored wall. No door. No number. No seam. But it was too wide. The space between 615 and 617 was just wide enough that there should have been a door. Natalie walked up and placed her hand against the wall. Cold. She knocked once. Hollow. She stepped back. And for a second, she swore she heard something. A whisper, so faint she thought it came from inside her head. It said her name. Natalie jerked her hand away from the wall. She looked up and down the hallway. Empty. Silent. No staff. No guests. She pressed her ear to the wall between rooms 615 and 617. Nothing. Then, again. A whisper. This time, she made out more than just her name. You heard me. You answered. Come back. She stumbled back, heart pounding. Her mind scrambled for a rational explanation. Thin walls? A prank. Maybe room 616 did exist, and the staff just didn't want guests poking around. She quickly made her way back to the elevator, feeling like a trespasser. When she reached her room on the 7th floor, her mobile buzzed. A voicemail notification. She hadn't heard it ring. She tapped play. The voice on the recording was hers. Breathless, quiet. This is Natalie Caldwell. I'm going up now. I think I found it. Room 616. Her blood ran cold. She never made that recording. There was a silence on the tape, and then her own voice whispered, barely audible. I found it, and it found me too. The recording ended. Her fingers trembled so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Her brain kept repeating it. I found it, and it found me too. Had someone hacked her phone? Or was that a future version of her? The hotel room phone rang again. She jumped. Let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. She didn't answer. But by the 7th ring, the sound changed. It wasn't ringing anymore. It was breathing. Natalie yanked the phone cord from the wall. The sound stopped instantly. She stared at the phone, her pulse pounding in her neck. It felt ridiculous to be afraid of something so old, so ordinary. But she couldn't deny what she'd heard. The hotel room phone had been breathing. She tossed the receiver aside and stood up. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, shaken. She hadn't even changed clothes from last night. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes. She splashed water on her face. Then she did what any normal person would do. She Googled. Room 616 Hotel Superstition. Hotel Lumiere Geneva Ghost. Geneva Hotel Missing Room. Nothing helpful. She tried searching the hotel name in forums. A few reviews. Some tourist blogs. Nothing strange. But on the 3rd page of results, buried deep, she found a comment on a 5-year-old travel forum. If anyone stays on the 6th floor, don't knock on the wall between 615 and 617. Some rooms don't want to be remembered. That was all. No username. No follow-up. Natalie leaned back in the chair and stared at her phone again. The voicemail was still there. Her voice, but not from the present. I found it, and it found me too. She looked at the hotel phone again. Disconnected. Silent. Then she noticed something new. The bathroom mirror was fogging up, even though the water had been off for 10 minutes. Slowly, letters began to appear in the condensation. 616. Then a second word appeared beneath it. Now. Natalie stared at the mirror. The fogged glass pulsed with moisture, the two words dripping slowly like the mirror was bleeding. 616. Now. She wiped it with a towel, but the words returned again almost instantly. Fainter, but still there. She backed out of the bathroom, heart hammering. Her instincts screamed leave now, but something else, curiosity, fear, fate, held her in place. She grabbed her coat. 10 minutes later, she was in the 6th-floor hallway again. No camera. No phone. Just the brass keycard in one hand and a growing sense that this was a terrible, irreversible decision. She walked slowly past each door. She paused. Ahead was room 617. And between the two, that same blank wall. But this time, something was different. There was a shadow on the floor. A thin line, like moonlight leaking beneath a door. Except, there wasn't a door. She stepped closer. And with each step, the wall shimmered, like heat waves rising off pavement. Then, just for a second, it flickered. There was a door. Old wood. Faded brass numbers, 616. Then it vanished again. Natalie blinked hard. She touched the wall where the door had been. It was solid, cold. But she could still see the outline now. Like the wall had forgotten to hide it fully. She pressed her hand against it, and this time, it gave. The wall wasn't a wall. It was soft, like wet paper stretched over an opening. Something inside pulsed once. And from the other side, she heard it. A soft knock. 3 times. Knock. 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 And then, in the voice that matched the voicemail. Natalie. I'm still in here. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run. Every nerve in her body screamed turn back, go upstairs, call someone. But her hand was already pressed against the place where the door had appeared. The wall felt like wet leather. Soft. Almost skin-like. It flexed under her touch, and she could swear she felt something heartbeat-like behind it. The voice had been hers. Not someone else imitating her. Her own voice. From the voicemail. I found it. She closed her eyes, took a single breath, and pushed. The wall gave in like a membrane stretched too thin, and she stumbled through. Behind her, the entrance vanished. No seams. No outline. Just endless beige wallpaper stretching in both directions. She turned around. She was no longer in the 6th-floor hallway. She was somewhere else. It looked like a hotel corridor, same molding, same lighting, but something was wrong. The lights buzzed low and sickly. The carpet was faded gray. The hallway twisted slightly to the left, and the air smelled of mildew, like something long buried. She tried to step back through, but there was no door now. Just smooth wallpaper again. A hollow cough echoed from somewhere deep inside the corridor. Then footsteps. Slow. Unhurried. Coming closer. Natalie, said the same whispery voice from the phone. You came back. She turned and began walking, each step echoing louder than it should. The hallway narrowed slightly. Then she saw it. A door ahead. Wooden. Brass number barely clinging to it, 616. And from beneath it, a trickle of black water seeped across the carpet toward her feet. Natalie stared at the door. Room 616. This time, it was undeniably real. The numbers were tarnished but visible. The black water underneath pulsed slightly, as though stirred by something inside the room. It carried a strange smell, like burnt flowers and stagnant rot. She took a single step forward, then stopped. Her reflection was moving in the doorknob. Only, she wasn't moving. Her arms hung limp at her sides, heart pounding. But in the curved brass knob, her reflection tilted its head. Slowly. And smiled. Don't knock, the reflection whispered, lips unmoving. You already let it in. She stumbled backward. The hallway darkened behind her, as if a long shadow were crawling up the corridor, swallowing light as it came. She tried her phone, no signal. No icons. No battery symbol. The screen just said, Room 616. No. She backed away from the door, turned, started to run. But the hallway behind her was gone. Not dark. Not hidden. Just gone. Only wall. Only door. The hotel had rearranged itself like a mouth preparing to swallow. She turned back to 616. The doorknob was turning slowly. Click. The door creaked open. Darkness spilled out like smoke, heavy, black, and pulsing with movement. Not smoke. Not mist. Hair. Long strands of tangled, wet black hair spilling across the carpet. Then a pale foot. Then another. A woman crawled out. Backwards. Her arms bent the wrong way. Her head tilted at an impossible angle. Her mouth opened too wide. And in Natalie's own voice, the thing said, I am you. I've always been in here. Natalie staggered back until her shoulders hit the cold wall behind her. The woman crawling out of room 616 dragged herself forward, joints popping, hair spreading like seaweed over the wet carpet. Her skin was colorless, waxy, as if drained. Her eyes, there were no eyes. Just shadow. Yet the voice that poured from her twisted mouth was unmistakable. Her own. I waited, the thing said, upside down now, bent backward like a puppet with broken strings. You called me. You let me in when you answered. And now, I can be real. Natalie couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. She reached for the wall behind her, feeling for seams, buttons, anything that could open the way back to the hotel. There was nothing. Just fabric-like wallpaper that pulsed faintly under her fingers. The other Natalie crept closer, her movements jerky, almost playful. Do you know what this place is? The voice said. It's not a hotel. Not really. It's a mouth. It chews people like you. Lonely ones. Sad ones. The ones who leave voicemail echoes behind them. Natalie found her legs again and ran. She didn't care where. The hallway twisted in impossible ways. Corners that bent left and right at the same time. Doors without numbers. Staircases that led to brick walls. She turned back once. The other Natalie was walking now. Upright, grinning, blood running down her cheeks like tears. Behind her, room 616 stood open like a hungry throat. The black water flowed faster now, chasing Natalie's feet. She screamed, not for help, but to stay real. And as she turned another corner, something else began whispering from the walls. Hundreds of voices. Some pleading. Some laughing. Some, hers. Natalie ran blindly. The hallway kept stretching, turning, folding in on itself like it was alive. No matter how far she ran, she never reached an elevator, a staircase, nothing that resembled an exit. Behind her, the wet dragging sound followed. The other Natalie didn't run. She didn't have to. She belonged here. The whispers in the walls grew louder. Some cried. Some moaned. Some repeated the same word. Stay. But one voice stopped Natalie in her tracks. Natalie. It was her mother's voice. It's okay. Just rest. You've been so tired. She pressed her palms to the wallpapered corridor. It was warm now. Breathing. Another voice came, her ex-boyfriend. The one she'd left without saying goodbye. This is where people like you go. People who disappear inside themselves. She sank to her knees. Her mind was unraveling, thread by thread. That voicemail, I found it. And it found me too. She understood now. 616 wasn't a room. It was a reflection. A trap. A version of herself curled in a place between walls, fed by guilt and silence and sleepless nights. The hotel hadn't created it. She had. And now it wanted her. From somewhere behind her, the sound of barefoot steps on wet carpet grew louder. She stood and turned. The other Natalie was there, just a few feet away. Her grin had grown too wide to fit her face. In her hands, she held something. A phone. Natalie's phone. "Time to finish the message," the doppelganger said, offering it out like a gift. "Say the last part." Natalie backed away, whispering, "This isn't real." But the walls whispered back, "It's more real than you've ever been." Natalie stared at the phone. It was hers, same scratches, same cracked corner, same wallpaper photo of her and her little sister taken 2 years ago. Only now, the screen glowed red. Recording. 2:17 a.m. The other Natalie smiled with teeth too small, too many. Her head tilted slightly, twitching like an old film reel skipping frames. "Just say it," she whispered. "Say what you already said. Fulfill the loop. Then you can stay. Forever." Natalie shook her head. "I didn't say that," she muttered. "I never made that recording." The doppelganger's smile didn't fade. "You will." From all around her, the corridor began to close in, walls inching closer, ceiling lowering, floor rippling like water. Doors bled black around the edges. The lights blinked violently. Something ancient had awakened in the space between this world and the next. Room 616 wasn't a room. It was a memory, a doorway, a feeding ground. And Natalie was the meal. The phone in the doppelganger's hand rang once. Then again. Natalie heard her own voice echo back from the speaker, tinny and distant. "I'm going up now. I think I found it." She dropped to her knees. She didn't want to disappear. Didn't want to become a whisper inside a wall. But she could feel herself unraveling, her thoughts slipping, her skin prickling like it didn't belong to her anymore. The other Natalie leaned in close. "Finish it. Say it with me." Together, they whispered. "I found it, and it found me too." And the phone stopped recording. Silence followed the final whisper. Natalie sat motionless, the phone still glowing red in her hand. The words echoed in her head like a curse she couldn't unspeak. "I found it, and it found me too." The hallway shuddered. The walls flexed outward, then collapsed inward like a set of lungs exhaling their last breath. Light drained from the ceiling bulbs, turning everything gray and dim. Behind her, the door to room 616 creaked open wider. Something waited inside. Not the doppelganger now, she was gone. Dissolved. Or absorbed. What was left was the room itself. A breathing, thinking thing. Natalie could feel it watching her. Not just with sight, but with memory. With hunger. And with recognition. The voice that rose from the darkness was not hers anymore. It was older. Weathered. It sounded like her future. "You've already been here before," it said softly. Again and again. Natalie stood, swaying. "No," she whispered. "I'm not staying. I'm going back." The corridor laughed. Quietly, mockingly. "Back to what? The job you hate? The city you can't sleep in? The silence no one notices but you? We're the only ones who heard you cry." The door to room 616 began to close on its own. Natalie didn't think. She ran for it. At the last moment, she dove forward, through the blackness, through the wet air that clung like cobwebs, reaching for the shape of a hallway, a window, anything real. She landed hard. Carpet beneath her hands. She looked up. She was lying in front of her room. Room 712. Back in Hotel Lumiere. The hallway was normal. But her phone. Still in her hand. Screen cracked. Recording paused. Recording saved. 2:17 a.m. Geneva winters were quiet. Too quiet. On the 7th floor of Hotel Lumiere, room 712 sat empty again. A do not disturb card hung from the doorknob. The staff never spoke of the guest who'd left without checking out. One morning, the bed was made, the lamp was still on, and the room key was left on the desk. But the woman who booked it? Gone. Vanished. Her name was Natalie Caldwell. The police did what they always do in such cases: files, forms, polite searches. But no luggage, no passport, no credit cards were ever found. Only her phone, placed neatly on the pillow. It still contained a single voice message. Unsent. Unshared. I found it. And it found me too. Tourists still visit Hotel Lumiere. They praise the service, the velvet curtains, the lovely croissants. They never ask about the 6th floor. But sometimes, a few curious ones do. They hear the rumors. About a missing room. About a door between room 615 and 617 that wasn't always a wall. They knock. They press their palms to the smooth wallpaper. And once in a while, someone goes missing. Just like Natalie. If you search for her name now, you'll find nothing. Her blog is gone. Her photos wiped. It's as if she never existed. But if you stay on the 7th floor, at 2:17 a.m., your room phone might ring. And if you answer, you'll hear her voice. Soft. Breathless. I'm still here. And it's still with me. Then, click. Silence. Just before the phone starts breathing. The first time Emma heard it, she thought it was the wind. She had arrived that afternoon, sore, cold, and irritated from the bus ride that wound like a snake through the Carpathian Mountains. The village of Sairani wasn't on most maps. That was part of the appeal. She wanted out. Away. Somewhere old, quiet, and untouched. The innkeeper was a thin, sun-wrinkled man named Pavel. He looked like he belonged to another century. His voice was soft but serious. You'll be in room 5. 2nd floor. Keep the shutters closed at night, miss. Emma had laughed. Is it that cold? Pavel hadn't smiled. Cold is the least of it, he said. You may hear knocking. At night. It will be exactly 3 knocks. Only 3. She blinked. You've got pranksters up here? No, he said. No people. Not anymore. There had been a silence then. A heavy, uncomfortable one. Then Pavel leaned in, his old eyes like frost on glass. Don't open the door, he whispered. No matter what it says. She didn't ask what he meant. Not then. She just laughed politely and carried her small suitcase up the creaky stairs, the scent of wood smoke and something older, damp earth, maybe, following her. The room was simple. Old bed. Small window. Thick curtains. Wood walls that groaned like they remembered storms long gone. She fell asleep listening to the fire crackle in the hearth. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the sound came. Knock. 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 From the other side of the door. 3 slow, patient knocks. Then silence. Emma didn't move. Her heart thudded like a fist in her chest. Just the wind, she told herself. She was wrong. Emma didn't sleep again that night. She sat up in bed, back pressed against the wooden headboard, blanket wrapped tightly around her. The only sound was the fire dying in the hearth and the wind gently brushing the shutters. But she couldn't forget the sound. 3 knocks. Not loud. Not angry. Just deliberate. Like someone, something, knew exactly what it was doing. Exactly how to wake her without waking anyone else. By morning, it almost felt like a dream. Almost. She found Pavel downstairs in the small kitchen, preparing tea in a dented copper kettle. He didn't look up when she entered. He just said, "You heard it." Not a question. Emma paused. "What is it?" Pavel turned slowly. His face was unreadable, but his hands trembled slightly as he poured her a cup. "No one knows. But it comes. Only at night. Only when someone new sleeps upstairs." Emma laughed nervously. "You're serious?" Pavel looked at her. Not blinking. "If you hear it again tonight, don't speak. Don't answer. And above all, do not open the door." She tried to push for more, but he said nothing else. Just went about his morning like it was any other cold, gray morning in Sairani. Emma spent the rest of the day hiking along the frost-covered forest edge, her boots crunching old leaves and frozen twigs. She tried to shake the feeling from the night before, but it clung to her. That night, she made sure the door was locked. She even slid a chair under the handle, just in case. Still, at 3:03 a.m., she woke up with a start. Same sound. Knock. 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 She stared at the door. No voice. No footsteps. Just silence. Until the door handle twitched. Emma didn't scream. She couldn't. Her throat felt frozen as her eyes locked onto the door handle. It moved again. Just a small jerk, like someone trying to turn it gently. Slowly. The chair wedged beneath the handle creaked. The wood trembled slightly. And then, silence again. Emma sat frozen, barely breathing. She counted the seconds in her head. 10. 30. 60. Nothing. The handle stayed still. She didn't sleep. Not really. Just drifted with one eye half open until sunlight finally broke through the shutters. When she went downstairs, Pavel was already waiting. He handed her coffee without a word. "It tried the door," she said, barely above a whisper. Pavel nodded slowly. "It gets bolder on the second night." She frowned. "Why?" "Because it learns you. Remembers you. Each time someone answers it in any way, sits up, listens, even thinks about opening the door, it becomes part of you. That's what it wants." Emma swallowed hard. "And what happens on the third night?" Pavel looked out the small kitchen window. The sky was low and gray. Snow was coming. No one's ever made it past the third night. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "Most leave after the second. The ones who stayed, well, they don't stay long after. And when they leave," he turned to her, his face hard now, "they're not the same." Emma shook her head. "This is crazy. You know that, right?" But Pavel said nothing. Just stared at the snow beginning to fall. That evening, she tried not to sleep. She brewed tea. She read. She paced. But sleep still came. Eventually. And so did the knocking. Emma didn't open her eyes right away. She heard the clock ticking. Then it stopped ticking. Silence pressed against the walls like a living thing. Then, knock, knock, knock. Exactly like before. Slow, measured, intentional. This time, the knocks were softer. Closer to a tap. Not like fists. More like fingers. She gripped the blanket tight against her chest. The chair was still under the doorknob. She could see it in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. She waited. Then came a voice. Soft. Familiar. Her heart jolted. "Emma." The voice whispered. "Sweetheart, it's cold out here." "It's me. It's Mom." Emma sat bolt upright. Her mother? No. Her mother had died in a hospital in Bristol 2 years ago. "Please let me in, baby," the voice whispered again, more urgent now. "I've missed you. Please." Emma shook her head. Her whole body was trembling. "No," she whispered. "You're not her. You're not." The thing behind the door pressed its palm flat against the wood. She couldn't see it, but she felt it. Felt the warmth bleeding through. "If you don't let me in, I'll freeze. I'm your mother, Emma. Don't you love me?" Her hands covered her ears. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You're not real," she said. "You're not real." Then, silence again. No knock. No whisper. Just the slow return of the ticking clock. But by morning, she found something new. Under her door. A small paper photograph. Faded. Of her as a child. Held in her mother's arms. Emma stared at the photo in her hands. It was old, creased, worn, corners torn. A Polaroid. She recognized it instantly. her mother's arms around her, standing on the back porch of their childhood house in Cornwall. Emma couldn't have been older than 5. But there was something wrong. Her mother's face was off. Too pale. The smile frozen, stiff, like it had been drawn on later. Her eyes had no shine. No life. And Emma couldn't remember that photo ever being taken. She didn't remember that dress either. Or that day. Her fingers trembled as she flipped it over. Something was written on the back in blue ink. Shaky, childlike letters. Let me in. Love, M.O.M. She dropped it. Ran downstairs. Pavel was in the kitchen, chopping onions with methodical slowness. He didn't look up. You heard her voice, didn't you? Emma's mouth was dry. How did it know her voice? How did it know about that picture? Pavel wiped his hands and finally looked at her. It takes what you miss. What hurts you most. What you still dream about when you think no one is watching. She felt dizzy. Pavel stepped forward and gently placed a small iron key in her hand. Room 7. At the far end of the hall. It's locked for a reason. She blinked. What's in there? He didn't answer. Only said, don't sleep tonight. Whatever happens, stay awake. Emma gripped the key, and felt, in her chest, the smallest whisper of something else. Not fear. Curiosity. The same curiosity that kills cats, and calls to the dark. Emma stood outside room 7 just before sunset. The hallway felt colder at this end. Still part of the inn, but somehow forgotten. Like no one had walked it in years. Dust coated the floorboards. The wall sconces flickered, though she was sure the rest of the inn had stable electricity. She slipped the small iron key into the lock. It resisted at first. Then turned with a dry metallic groan. Inside, the room was nothing like hers. No bed. No furniture. Only an old wooden chair in the middle, facing the far wall. That wall had been scraped down to bare wood. Deep claw marks carved into it. Not random either, they were long, deliberate slashes, over and over, like someone had tried to carve a way out. In the corner sat a small pile of items. A child's worn-out shoe. A cracked pair of reading glasses. And a single human tooth. Emma's stomach turned. She backed away, but the door slammed shut behind her. Click. Locked from the outside. She yanked the handle. Nothing. The temperature dropped. Then, slowly, the wooden chair creaked. Moved. Just slightly. She turned, and saw the wall begin to bleed. Thin red lines, trickling from the claw marks like the wall itself had been wounded. And from behind the wall, a faint whisper. Her mother's voice. I'm in here, Emmy. I'm waiting. Emma screamed. She kicked the door. Pounded it with her fists. When it finally opened, Pavel stood on the other side. But he didn't look surprised. Just tired. You stayed too long in that room, he muttered. It's inside you now. Emma didn't remember falling asleep. But she must have. When she opened her eyes, she was in her bed again. Room 5. The fireplace was cold. The chair was still wedged under the door. Her clothes were the same, but her hands were streaked with dry blood. Thin red lines under her fingernails. Splinters buried in the skin. Like she had been clawing at something. Or, trying to dig her way out of wood. She gasped and bolted to the sink, scrubbing her hands until they stung. The water ran pink. That's when she saw it. In the mirror. Not her reflection. Not exactly. Her face was there. Pale. Wide-eyed. But behind her, just over her shoulder, a shadow moved. Slow. Like someone pacing a room just out of frame. She spun around. No one there. The mirror? Still showed the shadow. It moved again, closer now, standing behind her like it belonged there. It's inside you now, Pavel had said. She left her room in a panic, running down the hallway toward the stairs. The door at the end, room 7, was wide open. Inside, the chair sat empty. But carved into the wooden wall, fresh and wet, were new words. "You opened me." Emma backed away, breath shaky, hands cold. A knock echoed. Not from the hall. Not from the door. From inside the mirror. 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. Hungry. Emma stared at the mirror. The glass trembled. Knock. 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 From inside. This time it wasn't a reflection, it was a window. And behind the glass stood the silhouette of a woman. Slight frame. Head tilted. Her mother. Or the thing wearing her mother's shape. Its hand pressed to the glass. Skin too pale, veins too dark. Lips moved without sound, mouthing words Emma had heard only in dreams. "Let me in." Emma stumbled backward, her heel slamming into the bed frame. She wanted to scream, but her voice was buried under ice. The mirror pulsed again, like breath on glass. Then, a crack. A thin black line, spreading across the surface like a spider's leg. Another one followed, and another, until the whole mirror webbed with fractures. Behind it, the thing's mouth opened. Wider. Too wide. Rows of teeth, sharp and wet, opened across her mother's familiar face. Emma grabbed the dresser lamp and threw it. The mirror shattered into 100 pieces. Silence. The pieces scattered across the floor, glinting in the firelight. And in each piece, her mother's eyes still stared up at her. Still moving. Still blinking. Still watching. From all angles. She ran out of the room. Down the stairs. Straight to Pavel's door. She pounded it. When he opened it, he didn't say a word. Just nodded once and let her in. Pavel's room smelled like ash and old tobacco. A small oil lamp burned on his desk, casting soft shadows across the walls cluttered with books, old keys, faded photographs, and something stranger. Drawings. Dozens of them. Each showed the same door. Heavy. Wooden. Dark. Always 3 marks carved into it. Sometimes the marks bled. Emma stood frozen, staring at them. Pavel lit a second candle and gestured toward the chair by the fire. "You weren't supposed to stay past the second night." She sat. Her voice cracked. "What is it?" He sat across from her, elbows on his knees. "It doesn't have a name. Not one it gave us. But it was born here. In these woods. Long before we started building with brick or stone. It lives on attention, invitation, memory. Every time someone believes, every time they listen, speak, answer, it steps 1 inch closer." Emma looked at him. "It knew my mother." Pavel nodded slowly. "It knows what hurts most." He leaned forward, more serious than ever. "Tomorrow. You leave. First light. No bags. No goodbyes. If you stay another night." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Emma nodded. But part of her was still trembling. Not with fear. With guilt. Because she had believed the voice. Even for a second. She had wanted it to be real. And whatever it was, it knew that. That night, she locked herself in. She didn't sleep. She didn't dream. Until 3:03 a.m. When the knocking came again. And this time, the voice didn't whisper. It screamed. Knock. 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 Then silence. Then, "Emma, open the door." Her mother's voice, but this time not soft. It was desperate. Broken. Screaming like she was being dragged across gravel. "Please. It's burning. Oh God, please." Emma sat frozen on the bed, her hands clamped over her ears, her back pressed against the cold wooden wall. The door handle rattled. Then slammed. Again. And again. The thing behind the door was no longer patient. "It's dark in here, Emma. Why won't you help me?" Her mother had never yelled like that. Not even when she was sick. Not when the cancer had chewed away her voice and left only a whisper. This was too much. Too loud. Too violent. It was using her voice now like a weapon. Emma crawled to the fireplace, her back to the wall, tears streaming down her face. "You know it's me," the voice wailed. "Don't let me die again. Emma, open the door." She covered her ears harder. Then, silence. Dead, empty, cruel silence. She peeked toward the door. Still shut. The handle wasn't moving. She waited. And waited. And then, like breath against her neck, she heard it. But it wasn't from the door. It was from inside the room. "I knew you'd let me in eventually." She turned around. And it was behind her. It stood between her and the door. A shape, tall, crooked, half swallowed by shadow. It wore her mother's face like a cheap plastic mask. Wrong proportions. Eyes too big. Smile too long. And behind it, something rippled, like spider legs unfolding from under a coat. Emma couldn't move. Her muscles had turned to stone. The thing took a step forward, bare feet slapping the old wooden floorboards with wet sounds. Its head twitched once. Twice. Then stilled. "Why did you wait so long?" it asked in a soft voice. Emma's mouth opened, but no sound came. "I knocked nicely," it said, cocking its head. "I even said please." Then it blinked, and in that blink, its eyes changed. From her mother's blue to something black. Wet. Reflective. And then it screamed. Not with her mother's voice. With Emma's. A perfect mimic of her own scream when she was 5 and fell down the basement stairs. Then her voice when she'd begged her father not to leave. Then her voice on the night her mother died. All of them. One after another. Layered over each other, echoing around the room like a choir of grief. Emma crawled backward, scraped her palms raw, gasping. The fireplace flared to life behind her with a roar, casting monstrous shadows. And just as the thing reached out, the door burst open. Pavel stood there, holding a rusted iron cross in one hand and a small bag of ash in the other. "Back," he growled. "You've had enough." The thing hissed. It didn't vanish. Not yet. But it backed away, crawled backwards up the wall and into the ceiling corner, where it clung like a dying spider. Watching. Waiting. Part 12. The final knock. Pavel muttered something in Romanian as he scattered ash across the floor in a crooked ring. The thing stayed in the ceiling corner, trembling, snarling without sound. The smell in the room turned sharp. Iron, mold, and something rotting. Emma couldn't take her eyes off it. Even though its face had melted now. Her mother's features drooping like wax. One eye too low. The jaw twisted sideways. "It won't go far," Pavel whispered. "Not now. Not until it's done." Emma's voice shook. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took her hand and led her slowly out of the room. Down the hall. Down the stairs. Out into the icy night. No bags. No shoes. Just her coat and the cold stars above the Carpathians. The morning bus came early. She didn't look back. Not even once. London. Rain. Emma lives in a small flat above a bookshop. She doesn't talk about the trip. Doesn't answer when people ask why she never finished writing that travel article. She sleeps with all the lights on now. She doesn't keep mirrors anymore. But every year, on the same date, at exactly 3:03 a.m., there's a sound. Knock. 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 She's moved twice. It still finds her. She never answers the door. Never speaks. Never even breathes. Until the night it knocks. And speaks again. "It's me, sweetheart. Let me in. I know you still miss me." She closes her eyes. And this time, she whispers back. "No.